Hi, everyone. Interestingly, everyone here has met me before. The girls in the front get that hello again. I guess you guys didn't expect to see me again. My talk here today is actually, I have two goals. It's about teaching myself how to code and how the lessons I learned and reflected on back in the day still apply to us and our careers today. And specifically, I wanted to focus on Pivotal Labs and how the exact same lessons are things that we focus on a day-to-day basis and we actually cater to. So normally, a lot of people have actually heard my background already, so I apologize for the people in the back. But I thought it might give us a good context, especially for our new guests, to be able to see what an atypical or now becoming more typical journey looks like when you're teaching yourself how to code. So, first things first, for me, something I'm very passionate about is diversity, and especially diversity in STEM careers, diversity in engineering, diversity in tech. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is because when we have a more diverse audience, we bring our own backgrounds and we make our jobs much more interesting. Amongst the many benefits that I have, I personally benefit from talking to people from different backgrounds, from different age groups, from different states, countries. And I want more people like that to enhance my work culture. These are a bunch of my friends who had transitioned their careers, coming from history and sales, being a community organizer, being a textile designer, and like working on textiles in India. There are people in the audience who are movie stars, who have their own rock band, and are now engineers here today. And the point is that if you think you're someone who has this random, strange background, you're not alone. And it's actually wonderful. These are people I look up to. These are my friends for life. And I kind of wanted to show you what that looks like at Pivotal Labs. So if you work at Pivotal Labs, do you mind raising your hand for a second since we have 40 to 50 girls up in the front? You see all those people in the back and most people who are still eating, like all of those people? They're our Pivotal engineers. Now, if you don't mind, for 1 second, if you come from, and not just engineers, designers and PM people too. We have people from Pivotal and Pivotal Labs and Cloud Foundry, okay? And I could see people in the back going, so if you come from, if your background is not, like your major or your previous job is not what you do now, either one, do you mind standing up for a second so we can see how many people we have with that experience? This is why I love working here, and this is incredible. You don't necessarily have to go through the traditional path of going through computer science and then starting your first internship at Google and then, transitioning over to your next job and so on and so on. You don't have to do that. You can, and we have those people here today, and they make my job all the better as well. But it's not the typical, that's not how you have to do it. So if you were to look on LinkedIn, this would be my bullet-pointed resume. I was an energy analyst at PA Consulting for 2 years. Then I worked at Recurse Center for 3 months. I worked at my first software job, Rent the Runway, for 9 months. Worked at my second software job, Floored, for 13 months, and am now an engineer at Pivotal Labs. It's been 6 months and counting. Super boring. Tells you nothing about me. And so this is what I kind of find as the problem of typical introductions. It gives you zero context, and it makes it look so easy. So I'm actually going to give you some of the white space between the bullet points. So my first look at programming was a 9th grade opt-in class at a program called IMAX. I took an Intro to Logic and Intro to Computer Science course. It was in Scheme, which is like probably a very jarring first functional language to look into. It used to be incorporated in a lot of school curriculums in college and is no longer incorporated for a few reasons. I took AP Computer Science A, which was in Java, and it was kind of interesting, but like not interesting enough for me to want to major into it. Took an Intro to Python class at MIT, realized it was kind of cool, but like not enough. And I was super intimidated by all of my friends who got these concepts right away. And they seemed to be so much more further ahead than I was that I gave up and I got a mechanical engineering degree. Also really hard, by the way, but it was just not programming. So how did I go from being an energy analyst to going to Recurse Center? There's actually a 6-month gap in between where I quit my first job, I applied to Recurse Center 2 times, and I used a lot of open online courses. Because I applied to Recurse Center 2 times and got rejected each time, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so what I did was I went to these open online courses and I tried to teach myself how to program. I made my first Hello World website. It took me a full day and it ended in tears, but I finally did it. And it was really exciting. And I finally got into Recurse Center on my 3rd try. So that's kind of like what that gap looks like between quitting my job and getting into my first program. Yeah. So I did have a little bit of a reserve, but I also convinced my friends to, so the question, by the way, is how did I financially be able to afford 6 months off between quitting my job and getting into Recurse Center? So the first thing is I had some money in reserve from my last job. Second thing is I convinced each of my friends to take me on for 1 month, or like 2-ish months. And so I offered to cook for them, clean for them, and like just let me sleep there. I didn't pay for any online courses, so that was easier. And one of the most interesting things I found was that now that I was just doing what I wanted, I wasn't overcompensating by paying for things that made up for my unhappiness. So I was like in a job where I wasn't exactly doing what I wanted. So that means I like ate out at dinner all the time. I like constantly went and traveled, and I went and saw other friends. I was actually kind of saving money in a way because I wasn't spending as much. And it did mean that I would force all my friends to meet up at the park, which is free. So between Recurse Center actually gave scholarships to people of diverse backgrounds. So I got a scholarship. It was funded by Dropbox, and that was how I was able to sustain those 3 months at Recurse Center. And Recurse Center is free otherwise, but I also got a scholarship. Between Recurse Center and my first software engineering job, what happened in that time? I applied everywhere. I emailed everyone. And like, I kid you not, what I did is I took 20 jobs that I was interested in. I went on LinkedIn, and I found every first and second connection. I emailed every single person begging for an introduction, cold emailed people from different companies, and I was just like, look, I'm so interested in what you do. Give me a chance. Let my foot in the door. Finally, I also blogged and made a shitty website, which you will see later, and I got my first internship. So that was kind of like my first foot in the door, and that's what it looks like. All right, so during that process, I learned 5 key lessons that I think still apply to our careers today. That is, forward progress is key, follow your curiosity, it takes initiative, it's not you, it's hard, and open source your journey. And so I'm kind of going to apply this to my journey and how I came about these lessons. So the first one is forward progress is key. Because I had taken a few classes, if you remember, in programming, I thought it was going to be so easy. And then I was like, all right, all I have to do is create my first Hello World website, and then after that, things are going to be easy. But it was not easy. It wasn't easy at all. Actually, it looked something like this. So it was me staring at my computer and willing it to do what I wanted, and then like kind of through tears, typing a little bit more, and then like wondering why it wasn't working anymore. And it was a lot of struggling. So I got to this point where I was like super depressed. I tried all these things, and I felt like I wasn't making any progress anymore. I read a blog post on some crazy dude who basically went through his MIT education in 2 years by studying on his own. And his key point out of it was, do what makes you move forward. And I was like, I've been doing what everyone has been telling me to do, and it's been working a little bit, but I'm like, I was trying to take the hard way. I was trying to like go my first class after I quit programming was a class on Scala through Coursera. It was like really confusing. I didn't know what a singleton was, and I just like felt like I wasn't making any progress. So At that point, I wiped my slate clean, and I was like, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to do what keeps me motivated, and I'm going to stop what makes me unhappy. Super simple, but it's very surprising how that affected all of the things that I did. So here's an example. These are the specific courses that I explored. I looked at Code Academy. I looked at Girl Develop It courses. I looked at Udacity, Coursera, MongoDB. I looked at tutorials. At the starting, I realized that a bunch of these were not my style. They are wonderful resources for different people, but for me, I wasn't learning from them. So then I was like, this Udacity CS 101 Intro to Programming, this is my style. This is what I actually enjoy. And yeah, a lot of people were kind of scoffing at me. They're like, Python's so easy. Why don't you do something harder? And I was like, man, I'm going to do what makes me happy, and I'm going to stop what makes me unhappy. So I started to find the things that I actually enjoyed doing. And those were some more Udacity courses, some more intros where there's actual examples of websites up, and I went through a bunch of different tutorials. So I did what made me happy, or it kept me motivated. I stopped what made me unhappy. And I did a few other things to make sure that I kept forward progress. I kept a network of positive friends. I got my friend programmers to spend time with me in my code. I just convinced them, I'm like, look, just for one day, I will do your laundry, but just sit down with me and let's make something together. And so I did like a list of my favorite movies, so you could like click on them and they would uncheck them. I tried little tiny projects where we had something in common, and I basically just bribed them into it. I also met other people going through my struggle. It was very hard for me to find other people who looked like me, talked like me, had similar interests to me. But I invested the time to find these people, and this is a network that I still keep together today. So I strongly advise you to seek out these people and invest in these people. I also figured out what my motivating environment was. I tried programming at home by myself, didn't work. I tried going to the library, didn't work. Tried going to workplaces, that didn't work. For me, my motivating environment were cafes, because I was around this electric atmosphere. There was some buzz, but I could stick my headphones in, and I could keep on moving. I allowed myself days off and bad days instead of beating myself up about it, and I celebrated everything obnoxiously. And so what that looks like is me seeing that my code compiled and being like, and just like walking around the cafe like I'm the shit and like celebrating about it and like being like, I'm going to eat that extra croissant and then walk it off later and it's fine. And so because I celebrated those things, I was able to mark my forward progress and continue moving forward. What does that mean at Pivotal Labs? At Pivotal Labs, we break our stories down, and we try to make sure that we're constantly moving forward. We make those small questions, but we also break our tasks down, and we motivate each other because we're pairing together. I think that we've internalized this concept of making forward progress, and this is one of the things I love about our environment. And I think that when we get stuck together, the way to keep us moving is to figure out what are those small, tiny ways for us to mark our moved progress, and how can we celebrate those together. Number 2. So the rest of these are going to be shorter stories, I promise. Number 2 is follow your curiosity. So when you're teaching yourself, I feel like sometimes I'm very goal-oriented, and I'm like, I got to get to point B, right? If I'm going from 5th Street on Howard, and I want to go to 14th Street at South Van Ness, the most shortest way is to go down Howard, right? So I'm just going to keep on walking down. But there's this really cool store that I see that I kind of want to check out a little bit. And the thing is that when applied to learning, if you see a link or a concept that you've never seen before, sometimes it's really valuable to take a pause and to follow your curiosity. Instead of doing what everyone's telling you to do, taking these courses, being able to explore that in depth, it's very surprising how much that stuff shows up in the future. So if you've seen, okay, here's an example, right? Have you guys ever gone on the Wikipedia rabbit hole? Okay, so like what that is like you click on a link and then you see something but you've never seen this other concept before, and you click on that link and you click on that link and you click on that link, and before you know it, it's been 2 hours, but you've learned a lot about some random things. And it's very surprising how much those random things come up in your life. Making those constant connections and branching out and then coming back together is a lesson that I learned to lean into and give myself time to do. And all of those concepts I feel like constantly come up and like have helped me become a better person. Number 3, it takes initiative. So what I mean by it takes initiative is that when I started learning by myself, my instinct was to sit at my computer, do a lot of reading, and until I could articulate the most perfect question, I would go and ask for help. And unfortunately, the problem with this is that the person that I would go ask for help, they know so much more about this than I do. I don't need to do research to ask a question. So my worry was that I didn't want to waste other people's time, so I would like go and answer the small pieces. And that I thought that a bunch of the questions that I had were really stupid questions. But by doing that, I shoot myself down, and I feel as though not taking the initiative to go and ask for help, to talk to other people, prevents yourself from a lot of the opportunities that you could be taking. So my advice is to let others help you, to pair up, pair programming, for example. Funny story, I wrote these slides a year ago before I worked at Pivotal Labs, and I came up with these concepts like 2 or 3 years ago, and I fell in love with pair programming, and this is what I do for a living now. So it's kind of amazing. Pairing up with other people helps you share your knowledge and share your context, and it's really funny. Even like the simplest things like shortcuts on your keyboard or fun tools that you can use to enhance what you're doing on your screen have made like miles of a difference. And to get your code reviewed, to check out different programs and meetups, this is the advice I have for taking initiative. And notice that I didn't say go out of your comfort zone and ask other people. I'm saying let others help you. As a person who finally knows something, and I'm so excited to share all my knowledge, I just want you to come to me and ask me the questions where I have the chance to help you out. And I feel like a lot of us here at Pivotal Labs feel the same way. So it's to go and reach out and ask those questions and allow them to help you. How this applies here is kind of like what I was just talking about. At Pivotal Labs, we encourage each other to ask questions and to help each other and answer them. It takes initiative. It's a very, very vulnerable position, but it's important to recognize that it's okay to do that. So, because it's much easier said than done, these were my mental strategies. So every time I start a new job, or like start a new class or meet new people, I allow myself a 6-month stupid questions allowed period. So this is a 6-month period where I'm not allowed to say, this is a stupid question, but I just kind of go and ask the question because I'm like, yo, I'm new. Like, you're going to just answer my question and you're going to be okay with it. If people give you problems about about asking questions, it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on them. I cannot count the number of times I've talked to friends, and I've experienced this myself, where people have made me feel bad for asking questions. They're like, you don't know what that is? And you're like, duh, I just asked you. I obviously don't know what that is. And the thing is, it doesn't have anything to do with me. When people write you off, or they might shut you down, or they might question you, it has nothing to do with you. It's because they're potentially insecure about the knowledge. Otherwise, why wouldn't they be happy to share it, right? So don't let them make you feel bad about it. And you're the one who's taking charge of your own career, your own learning process. You got to do what you got to do. If it means you're going to have to ask some questions and sound stupid, it's okay. All right, 2 more. It's not you, it's hard. So I kind of wish that someone had told me that my journey that I was about to embark on was hard, and it's okay. And like when I get confused, it's not a big deal. So here's a good example. When I was making the first Hello World website, so like for those of you who have been able to create a website, remember back to what that felt like. So I thought it was like, all right, I just got to learn Python, and that's it. I'm going to make a website. And they're like, no. You have to like actually use a tool in order to write the program. I had to learn Vim. That's 2 learning curves. But like, actually, it's 4 learning curves because then you need to learn a framework. I use Bottle, which is very similar to Flask. And I need to learn some HTML. 4 learning curves? No. There's actually like, I had to learn GitHub, I had to learn Heroku, I needed a domain just to get up my first website. There were like at least 7 learning curves, not to mention algorithms, context changes, translating my brainwaves, and like Googling forever. For example, if you go through the Heroku tutorial, they tell you to create a proc file, and they show you what goes in the proc file, but like no one told me that it wasn't like procfile.txt or anything. It was just proc file is a file, and you don't need any sort of suffix after it. Small things like this got me tripped up. And if someone had just told me that it's like, it's hard, like doing your first time, it's just hard, because everyone was just like, it's so easy, and when you get past it, it's going to be great. I'm telling you right now that your first time is going to be hard, but it'll get better afterwards. So many learning curves, people forget how hard it was. Reflecting back, so I remember sitting down with my friend in tears and finally launching my first website, and he was like, see, was that so bad? And I was like, no, it wasn't that bad. And I was like, oh, okay, I kind of understand what I'm doing now. If I were to replicate the entire thing, it wouldn't be so bad. That reflection helped me realize that I was making progress. The final thing is something called imposter syndrome. If you feel like you're the dumbest one in the room and you don't belong, you're probably not alone, and you want to read some articles on imposter syndrome. It's like going viral right now, and everyone's talking about it. So there are plenty of articles. Just Google the term. So my favorite phrase to tell myself is, I'm not stupid, I just don't know it yet. So when things like that happen, that's what you got to tell yourself. You got to have some sort of like catchphrase inside of you. And someone told me this. So I was like, I don't get it. I'm so dumb. And they're just like, no, you just have to figure it out. Last one is to open source your journey. I read a wonderful blog post that was like, as you're looking for jobs, I was trying to find my first software job, and there were a lot of people who were doing the same thing. How can I set myself apart? It is to make a website, to open a Twitter account, to blog about it. I was super terrified to do this because I wasn't really sure if my opinions would jive with everyone else. I didn't even know if I had opinions. And I realized that it was important for me to create those opinions and to reach out to other people. So I'm going to show you a relic of the past. This is my first website. It's still up. It's nehalita.com. It is the first time I ever used CSS. I found a new Google font, and I was like super excited about it. I had little icons on the top right corner, and if you hovered over them, they changed colors. I was super excited about this, and it still looks like that today, and I still get emails from recruiters about my wonderful website and how I have a mastery of coding. And doing this in and of itself differentiated myself. And then I also created a blog. And that was way harder than I thought because, one, what do I blog about? Two, it made me realize that even if I took something so simple as a Python list comprehension and tried to explain it, it was way harder than I thought. It's one thing to internalize these concepts, but explaining them has an entire different skill set. And by pushing myself to blog about these things and using that separate skill, it made me a much more viable candidate. That blog is still up, and you can still read this, and I haven't touched it, so it is exactly what it looked like the first time I learned from it. I also created a Twitter handle, and it took me long enough to do it. I still don't post on a lot of it because I get pretty shy, but being able to put my voice out there, put an opinion, makes me a different candidate, and also it forces me to think about my opinions and why I am doing the things that I do. So if you think it's hard to write blog post ideas, I listed a bunch up for you. So, and they don't have to be the hard concepts that you've learned in computer science. They can be as simple as cool things that you've learned from an event, like Get Set, coming to Pivotal Labs. Like, you could blog about that if you wanted to. Clarifying existing instructions. If you find a blog that doesn't explain something correctly, you can clarify that. This is something that I feel is a great opportunity for us at Pivotal Labs. We read tutorials and explanations all the time, and they're always kind of imperfect or outdated, or maybe we combine two resources to come up with the right solution. If we put that out there more, we'd be able to help other people too. Show how you did something differently. Explain a concept in your own words. Talk about why something's so cool. Talk about why it frustrates you, the opposite. And my specialty, make lists. I'm really good at listing things out. And on top of that, I don't even have to think about anything new. I wrote a blog post on speaking advice. So what I did was I talked to 20 people. I asked them what their advice was on speaking. I categorized it, and I blog posted it. All of a sudden, I have useful material for everyone else, and I've pretty much done nothing. I was just like, tell me what I should do. So I think that this is probably something that we at Pivotal Labs don't do that much. We don't really open source our journey, but maybe a New Year's resolution would be to try some of these things a little bit more. Those are my 5 lessons. Forward progress is key. Follow your curiosity. It takes initiative. It's not you, it's hard. And to open source your journey. So that's it. And that is Beyonce with a standing desk, because there's only, if you're going to do it, you got to go all out, right? So, yeah. Questions?
So I had a totally different life before I arrived here at Pivotal Labs. And when I came here, I was really intimidated because I was like, everybody in this room is like a brilliant programmer. Like, you always think about these hackers that are just dominating all the time. And I feel like the assumption that people have about Pivotal Labs, in some sense, is still the assumption that I have. And you mentioned imposter syndrome, you gave another talk about this. So I guess what I'm curious about is, like, how did you get over that, and what advice do you have for people in this room who have never been in an environment like Pivotal Labs, who think that everybody here is brilliant, and how do you step into that environment and not just get totally blown back up?
So, I'm going to try to summarize your question, and I think the question is, when you put yourself in an environment where you do think everyone is absolutely brilliant, how do you get into the mode and perform and lean into the benefits of that? Is that close?
Yeah. And also, just like, how do you get over the fear and like take that first step? So I feel like I'm always fascinated with the first step, and I feel like a lot of other people are really fascinated with the first step. So that first step of being like, everybody here's smarter than me, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah. So how do you take that first step? 2 things. One, I kind of made myself a deal that I was completely okay with being in the 3rd quadrant of any room I was ever in. Like 3rd or 4th, right? If I'm like the dumbest one in the room, then I'm reaping the most value out of everyone around me. So it was like kind of trying to remember that I'm absolutely terrified, but at least everyone else is so much smarter that all I have to do is listen and I can learn. And the second thing is that I think this is actually a really good question. I haven't thought about it. I think that talking to people and hearing their stories made me realize that they are absolutely awesome, but that we have a lot more in common than I thought. So, for example, at this specific lunch table, I was sitting around with a bunch of my colleagues, and I realized that we all came from different majors, completely different majors. And it, made me like kind of like intimidated, and I was like, oh my God, like everyone knows so many different things, but at the same time, we all just have different paths. And I think that helped me make my first step, was to kind of start to delve into the stories and get to know people better.
Do you feel like people trusted you? Like in those first few steps, you were like, I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm screwing up, everyone's mad, I'm going to get fired. Like, did you feel like people were like, nah, man, that's totally cool. Like, or were they like, no, you better figure this out?
So, do I think people trusted me the first time around? In my first software job, no, I totally did not think so. I was terrified, and I thought I was doing a horrible job until I started talking to a few people and realized that I wasn't as bad as I thought. Luckily, that was 2 jobs ago, so I'm kind of used to feeling really stupid when I come in, and it's kind of like the natural motions. For example, when I speak in front of you guys, my heart races. So I've spoken in front of you specific girls twice today, and I've already gone through like 5 heart attacks. And it's so normal for me now that I'm like, oh yes, like my hands are shaking, it's so normal. My voice is going to be breaking at some point. And then after I finish my talk, my hands are going to start shaking again. And it's just like so normal. So I'm used to these motions of feeling terrified, of feeling like I don't have trust. And being able to just be like, all right, if I'm just myself, and people will either like me or not. So if they don't, then I'll just find a different environment. Anyone else? I couldn't have done that good of a job. Come on, guys.
Any questions or any advice from other pivots for your
I'd love to hear from you guys.
For your younger self?
Yeah.
So just to follow up on what Mikey said, also trust the hiring process, right? If we hire you, we think you can survive here. So like, you gotta trust us on that. Some companies that's not true, so it's probably worth looking around at whether they just hire a lot of people and then fire half of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I also used to tell myself that if I got hired, it's on them, it's not on me. So like, if even in programs too, like Recurse Center, right? And like getting into Get Set is a very competitive program as well. I used to think that I was like the dumbest one there, and it was a mistake. Even getting into college, and then I was like, wait a minute, if they got me in and they thought I could do it, like that's not my problem anymore. I'm just gonna do what I gotta do. So, does anyone else have advice? Or oh yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Right? So basically things that you can have. How did you gauge to not just avoid important challenges that you needed to do? So that you just go forward and like, I'm happy doing this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. How did you make sure that you weren't also doing things that you needed to do also to learn and to just better in life? So sometimes you just keep going forward, but you think you're going forward, but you're also just avoiding, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you make sure you're not only doing the things that make you happy and you skip over the most important steps? And so the answer to that is that I was like very goal-oriented in kind of what I wanted to do. So I was like, I wanted to create a way to find out all my friends' favorite restaurants because I love food. You guys know this, right? Right. So I like love food, and I was like, I'm going to create a way so that all my friends will input their favorite restaurants, and I get to have this information now. And so by doing that and by being goal-oriented instead of specific skill-oriented, I had to cross those rivers eventually. And so like you can kind of keep on trying to go around as far as you want, but eventually I wanted to create this website so badly, and I wanted to know where everyone was eating so badly that I got to the harder parts. And so it was, I guess, to go on a higher level, eventually you'll have to cross those rivers, and if you want the end of the rainbow so badly, then you'll eventually cross. Or not. You can also give up, it's fine. Like there's certain like websites and certain classes where I just stopped and I wasn't interested anymore, and that was fine. Anything else? Yeah.
So you really went in all in on software development.
Yes.
Was there any point where you were like, maybe I made a mistake?
Yeah, like daily. So the question. Sorry, can you say that last line again?
So how did you get through that? What made you decide to keep going?
So the question is, did I ever think that I made a mistake going all out and just like quitting my job and like being like, I'm eventually going to become a software engineer? And the answer is yes. On a day-to-day basis, I thought that I made the wrong decision. And my friend network was what kept me sane. So, for example, with Recurse Center, I got rejected 2 times, and they like literally forced me to sit down. Like I wasn't allowed to get up from my chair until I finished the application, and I hated them for them, and I told them they were ruining my life. But like my friend network was the one who kept me sane and who kept me objective about my measurements, because as you learn more, you realize what you don't know, and so that's a terrifying thing, and you kind of lose track of the progress that you've made so far. So my friends were just like, you're being stupid again, just keep on going. And now I think there are a lot more people who have gone through those motions and who've like shown a record of success. So I try to find those stories more too. Yeah.
About how you just kind of started going on LinkedIn and going after people to get internship stuff. I think particularly for this crew that is something that they may try, but I'd love to hear from other people about intern stories or things that you think really helped you get those connections and create those networks.
Yeah, I might throw that question out to the audience. So it's like, what did you do to secure your first internship, or what were the unique things that you tried? And before I throw it out, one of the things that I realized is that, so I worked with a bunch of girls who code programs in New York, and some of the most interesting girls that I met were people who cold emailed libraries, museums, art exhibits, companies, and were just like, yo, take me on for free for a month, and I'll just like try to do something, and they charted their own ideas. And they got these really cool internships. So it's amazing what's out there if you just like kind of put yourself and try. Audience, does anyone have like an interesting tidbit or method that they tried? Yeah. You should be up here.
Can you handle
Yeah, it's coming.
Oh, great. All right.
Yeah.
So, to be this is dead. Does this work? Yeah, it does. I used to be a drummer in a rock band.
Yeah, he was who I was talking about.
Okay, so I used to play drums in a rock band for like 10 years, and I toured, and I almost flunked out of college 2 times, and I got I think a 1.8 GPA in high school. I was like a terrible student. And math, I was never good at math. I hated math. I hated science. I hated all school. I hated my teachers. My teachers hated me. Yeah, and then I was in a band for 10 years. So fast forward, I read this book that I thought was really fascinating, and I decided to take a couple classes, random classes. I followed the, whatever you said about following.
Forward progress is key.
Well, no, it was another one. It was like, whatever you find is interesting, just go down that path.
Follow your curiosity.
So I was like, oh yeah, I'm reading this crazy book about physics. Maybe I'll take a physics class. And I took it and did well. And so in a community college, totally on a whim, I went to this community college, took these classes, and got like 2 semesters worth of A's, and then applied for an internship at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a NASA field center in Pasadena. Because I was like, screw it, I'm just going to apply. And so the first thing I heard back was, well, this is really for underrepresented students or like whatever, and like maybe your track record is not long enough, whatever. And I just applied, and I got it. And so then I went and studied asteroids. And it was like, there was no decision ever made about wanting to study asteroids. But I was like, I'll study asteroids, why not? Did that. Applied to Berkeley on the night of the deadline, because why not? And I got in. Here's my jacket. I got in because my GPA was, so apparently you have to have like a 4.0 to get into Berkeley, right? I applied. I had a cumulative GPA after having flunked out of college 3 times. I think my cumulative GPA was like a 3.1. Who gets into Berkeley with a 3.1? I got in, and then I applied for 2 more internships. Actually, I applied for like 15 more internships, but I got like 5 of them and wound up negotiating to do 2 of them back to back. So I did one during the summer, also at NASA, doing nothing related to my field. It was in aviation policy research at Langley in Virginia. Totally not computer science, totally not my major, totally nothing, but it sounded really interesting and I did it. And then I negotiated to do another internship right after that at Qualcomm doing something in electrical engineering that was like related to like microelectrical mechanical systems, which I had no idea about, but again, just applied because screw it. Got that internship, came back, and then did my 4th internship also at NASA doing something completely different, and the 5th one at Pivotal right before I came here full time. But the bottom line is everything I did because screw it. I did it all at the last minute, putting basically no thought into it, and I applied for a million things. And when you do that, you'd be surprised what you wind up doing. And also, one last piece on this is that there were, like, I'm here, you may think, oh yeah, you must be a great software engineer, you must have known you wanted to do this your whole life. Every single step of the way, and we could talk about this afterward, was last second decision made on a whim.
Yeah, so there's a story for you. Anyone else?
No one can top that.
Are there any more questions? Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Neha. That was awesome.